Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we turn confusing corporate reports into something you can actually understand. Today we're diving into the Kingfish Holding Corporation's latest 10Q. It's a quarterly report, so think of it like a checkup for the company, but instead of a doctor, we're the financial detectives, and instead of a stethoscope, we have this incredibly long document filled with numbers and legal jargon. I promise though, we will make it worth your while. This report has a story to tell, one of bouncing back and making some smart financial moves, but also of a few things that still need watching. We will dive into it, but before we do, financial detectives, and instead of a stethoscope, we have, this incredibly long document filled with numbers and legal jargon. I promise though, we will make it worth your while. This report has a story to tell, one of bouncing back and making some smart financial moves, but also of a few things that still need watching. We will dive into it, but before we do, if you appreciate getting straight insights from corporate documents, make sure you're subscribed. We also have a Discord community linked in the description below if you want to chat all things finance. So what is Kingfish Holding Corporation anyway? They're in the recycling business, specifically dealing with ferrous, that's iron-containing and non-ferrous metals in the South Tampa Bay area. They buy, process, and resell these materials. Also, they have a merger with Renovo, which is accounted for as a reverse recapitalization. Basically, it's like one company taking over another, but pretending they were always in charge for accounting purposes. Let's dive into the money. Here are the most important numbers to know. First, cash and cash equivalents. As of March of 2025, they had about $864,000 in cash, up from $426,000 in September. Also, their accounts receivable net, which is the money owed to them. Now let's check the other side of the statement. The total liabilities are about $26 million. But now let's check the other side of the statement. The total liabilities are about $226 million. But good thing is that stockholders' equity is now positive at $41,19,000, improving from a deficit of about $112,000 last September. Also, their accounts receivable net, which is the money owed to them, sits at $88,000. This means more cash on hand, which is always good if it's interesting to look at. Related party loans. Current, this is money Kingfish owes to companies or people closely connected to them. That figure stands at about 1.38 millions current. This is money Kingfish owes to companies or people closely connected to them. Sits at about $112,000 last September. Now let's move on to the consolidated statements of operations. Revenues or sales are up big time. They sold around $1.5 million from last year, which means more than a 60% increase. The cost of goods sold, or how much they paid for them, were about $44,000, leaving them with gross profit, or how much they earned, of around $8T for them. Were about 60% increase in the cost of goods sold, or how much they earned, of around $82 profit, or how much they earned of around $82,000. This leaves us with basic earnings per share on net income of $144. Last year versus dollars bought, or how much they earned, of around $82,000. This leaves us with basic earnings per share on net income of the Twentard in Kai's last year's versus only A0 with Gatsakand, last year's liaisoned. The cost of goods sold, or how much they earned, of around $802,000. This leaves only, which means a massive more than 10x increase. The last few numbers we need to look at in this section are the weighted average shares outstanding, which tells us that the average basic amount of shares in the market that existed throughout the year was roughly 1,838,000 shares. Let's check the cash flow statements. What we care about in this statement is that net increase in cash came to be around $438,000. Adding it to the previous amount of $425,000, they ended up with cash of around $863,000. Remember, cash is king. So what are some of the interesting things to note here? The primary business of the company is to serve the recycling needs of the South Tampa Bay region. They purchase and containerize both ferrous and non-ferrous materials for resale to a variety of offtake partners in more than 60 product categories. So they sell to other companies, not directly to consumers. Now, for one of the juiciest things, reverse merger and reverse recapitalization, or in other words, accounting tricks. It says, each share of Renovo stock issued and outstanding immediately prior to the effective time, subject to and upon the terms and conditions set forth in the merger agreement, was cancelled and extinguished and were collectively converted automatically into account any shares of common stock held by the Renovo owners prior to the merger olabol with Kingfish, Babinin extinguished and were collectively converted automatically into 600,000 shares of common stock. As a result of the merger, on that the previous owners of Kingfish owned a good chunk of the company in exchange for merging Renovo with Kingfish, Alright, let's simplify that a little. The company has a lease agreement with 6 LLC for their buildings and property for around $480,000 a year. They also have the option to buy 6 LLC in the future. It is important to note that it has an initial term of 2 years and may be extended for a period of up to 5 additional years by the company. Related parties are those with close ties to the company, like major shareholders or family members of executives. It appears like the company has operational expenses and debt on behalf of 6 LLC, which, as we stated before, holds the real estate on which the business operates. They owe to each other about $1,009.580, and that amount bears no interest, which may or may not be SUS, and that amount bears no interest, which may or may not be SUS. Here is another interesting one. Let's see what are convertible notes payable to related party. They're basically loans that can be converted into company stock, and they're held by insiders. There's about $90,000 worth of this in total, and the company continues to pay these off. The company entered into a credit agreement with Conch and Shell Holdings Inc. with a line of credit in the aggregate amount of $200,000 and a credit agreement with 6 LLC. With a line of credit in the aggregate amount of $100,000 for a total line of credit of $300,000 to pay expenses related to Hurricane Milton. These loans did not bear any interest and were paid off by December of 2024. Let's talk about taxes, shall we? For the 6 months ended March 31, 2025. The company's total provision for income taxes came out to be $157. Keep in mind that a company's tax situation can change pretty significantly depending on all sorts of business decisions. It seems that the company has few, if any, commitments and contingencies. This may be due to the size of the company or the industry. The company will also have 5 years to acquire 6 LLC, but does not seem to have committed to anything. Alright, so here's where things get a bit more uncertain. As of April of 2025, trade policies may change, which means that increases in tariffs could be on the way, which can impact commodity prices and the company's profits. Of course, it depends on the decisions that the other side makes, so we will have to wait and see. Alright, so what's the verdict on Kingfish? The key here is the rising cash flow in operations. While there were related party transactions, there are some potential opportunities for Kingfish. Also, that Hurricane Milton left some pretty good opportunities. The main risks have to do with trade and existing loans. It is unknown if the company will continue to be able to roll the can to make things work, or if it might need to sell assets. The company definitely has opportunities for improvement. If they get rid of the loans, they may start to shine. We will need to see how it performs in the next period. And alright, that's our breakdown of Kingfish's latest filing. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.